Welcome to the Fantasy Champions Fantasy Football Podcast. Here's your host, Morgan Colby and Rick Lemon.
Welcome to the Fantasy Champions Podcast. Did you catch any of the Alliance of American Football? Is that what it's called?
I was too busy sleeping.
Relaxing on
Not
the first
watching that,
Sunday
yeah.
without football. I'm not going to lie. It's kind of relaxing. The stress as a fan of a team in the Super Bowl, it's very stressful.
Yeah.
Very stressful to watch a team play in the Super Bowl.
Man, it's awful, man. Just, watching every Super Bowl
every year
with our team in it.
There's a reason why people hate our fan base so much. So I did watch some of the AAF, and it was very not good. I think it's funny that a lot of people were like watching this intensely. Really bad football. Really, I'm not even talking about the product was good, the production value was good. They did a good job with it. They put it together well, wrapped a bow on it. The game itself that they broadcasted on national television was so bad. You could tell these guys do not belong in the NFL. And I hate to say that, but it was bad play. It was just really, it's like watching the D-League compared to watching, LeBron James in the NBA Finals.
People couldn't survive 1 week.
I know, they were like,
football.
Yes, here we go. I saw a bunch of people tweet, they're like, this is mediocre football, and everyone's freaking out about it. He's like, are we that desperate?
Yes.
Are we that desperate for football? I honestly think this thing's going to flame out.
Probably.
Flame out next week.
You know what isn't going to flame out, though? The XFL, baby.
Woo! The XFL, here we come.
I only want to see that to have a Vince McMahon appearance and someone gets thrown through a chair or through a table mid-football game.
Mid-football game. Runs on the field, steals the ball.
Oh my gosh!
You didn't see this. Okay, so you know how there's there's no honor in baseball. There's is it the first pitch? In hockey, they have the puck drop.
The puck drop,
What do they call it? Is it the first puck?
The ceremonial puck drop. Yeah.
So they had the ceremonial ball placement in this game.
What?
Because there's no kickoffs. They had the ceremonial ball placement. What the freak is that?
That's
Oh my gosh!
That could be a problem.
Yeah, that could be stupid. I thought it was not. It was just ridiculous because this is how they structured it, right? They took the 60-second play clock. It's 60 seconds, right? I'm not the only one that thinks that.
Yeah.
Okay, 60 seconds. So the play clock, they took the play clock and they shrunk it down to 35 seconds. So you have to move the ball faster down the field.
Right, which makes sense in theory. I get it.
So the problem is that the offenses in the one game I watched were so bad that they just kept on swapping the ball back and forth. And there was punting, and you could kick field goals. But the problem was every time somebody either scored a field goal or came back, it would just be literally people just swapping the ball back and forth on the field really quickly.
Yikes.
And I was like, this is just, if people don't score in this league, it's going to be really bad. If you had the talent that you have in the NFL playing in this league, it might be somewhat exciting. You'd have games where people score 80 points.
Well, what I noticed, and I think a lot of people noticed who didn't watch the game, was the buzz around it.
Yeah.
Which is a plus. And that hit on the quarterback. Yeah. I don't know who it was, but I saw that, and it almost made me want to watch. I was like, so, is this real football? Is it coming back? Big hits?
It's not coming back, sorry.
Unfortunately.
So what a lot of people don't realize is that they were all up in arms. They're like, oh my gosh, the AAF is already more manly than the NFL. And I'm like, okay, so first off, these are a bunch of training referees. They're all guys that are I think they're guys that are training for the NFL. That's what they said on the broadcast, at least. So they're just guys that miss calls, essentially.
Yeah, they saw that hit. And
they were like, ooh, that was a great hit right there.
Wow, that looked like it hurt.
Roger Goodell was like, nope, not today. We ain't doing that today. I was like, oh my gosh. So, the AAF, nothing can replace NFL football. At some point, there will be something that comes out that is like that. But
maybe,
but at this point, we don't really have much of anything outside of the NFL. So I'm here. Rick is here.
Yes, sir.
It's Tuesday, February 12th or 13th now. We had a snowstorm yesterday, so it prevented us from recording this amazing podcast. Today we are going to be drafting our perfect 2018 fantasy football draft. We're going to give you every single round, dissect the round, and tell you who our best player was from that round. And we'll try to construct a perfect team as best we can. So make sure you follow us on Twitter and Instagram. Like us on Facebook. We do have a Facebook. I was talking to a couple of people today. Said, "Would you like our page?" And they said, "Yeah." I'm like, "You still have Facebook?" I thought I was the only one.
Well,
people don't use Facebook anymore.
There actually are a lot of people that use Facebook, but most of them are over the age of 30. So
you just offended our entire audience over 30.
That is true. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm just saying that's a fact.
Yes, I still use Facebook, people. Subscribe wherever you listen. We're on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, wherever you want to listen. Make sure you drop a review and share this podcast with your friends, because we need to build the community of fantasy football players who are champions and not losers who drafted Chris Hogan in the 6th round.
Wow, way to call me out.
So let's get to the news. This week we had so much news around the NFL.
Way more than I expected.
Yeah, way more than I expected, considering that the league year starts in 2 weeks, something like that. So that means free agency, people. Free agency, the frenzy that is like 10 minutes.
Yeah, really, honestly.
10 minutes. It's funny, baseball, the training camp is starting. The pitchers, or not training camp, spring training has started. Pitchers and catchers are reporting, and Bryce Harper and Manny Machado have been signed with no one.
We already have Kareem Hunt off the board.
In the NFL, like, people are just signed.
A few other moves that we'll get to.
Yeah, it's true. So let's start with that. Kareem Hunt has signed with the Cleveland Browns.
You got a face right now that says, I don't like that.
I don't, because I like Nick Chubb and I like Kareem Hunt, and I wanted Kareem Hunt on a team that didn't have Nick Chubb.
For fantasy purposes.
For fantasy purposes. It's funny, the entire league is like, every move that people make, it doesn't matter. It's like fantasy related only.
Oh, yeah. No, like, when I see things now, unless it's like Patriots related, yeah. My head goes to fantasy for anything. Which... Yeah. I don't know if I should be proud of that. But
I shouldn't be proud of that. As far as Kareem Hunt is concerned, he's a talented guy. I'm just trying to figure out how they're going to use him. And the only thing that I kind of came up with 3 little options for this, and I'll go through them really quickly. Okay. But the first one is that they signed Kareem Hunt because John Dorsey, who is the GM of the Cleveland Browns, he drafted Kareem Hunt when he was on the Kansas City Chiefs. And so he loves Kareem Hunt. So my first thought was Kareem Hunt signs with the Browns. They're going to trade Chubb in the draft to pick up, maybe a big time, like what is this guy's name? Metcalf? I don't even know how to say his name yet. But the
Close
big
enough.
Yeah, the big time a big time wide receiver in the draft. There's a few of them this year. So, maybe they're trying to go out and get one of those guys. I find that highly unlikely.
Yeah, I'd
say
second one, the most unlikely option.
The second option was that Nick Chubb can't catch balls for nothing. Like, he can't. He's basically worthless in the passing game. Kareem Hunt, however, is a very good passing threat. So he can be used through the air as well as on the ground, but I think he's even better through the air than he is on the ground. So I would say they brought him in to catch passes when on downs when Baker Mayfield's going to throw it. That's the guy.
Yeah.
He's an extremely talented skill player. So I think what John Dorsey's trying to do is build what the Chiefs have currently. And the only thing he has left is just to get that big time wide receiver. But that's the second option, is that he's there to catch passes. The third one is that it's like, and I guess it mixes with the second one a little bit, but it's going to be like an Alvin Kamara, Mark Ingram situation, where Alvin Kamara is going to be the Kareem Hunt, or Kareem Hunt's going to be the Alvin Kamara, and Nick Chubb is going to be Mark Ingram, because Mark Ingram's the bruiser, and Alvin Kamara is the physical. I mean, not the physical one, but the athletic, agile one. So, I mean, that could be the situation that they're going for. They want, John Dorsey said they want as many skill players as possible. So if that's what they want to do, then that's what they want to do. I'm not judging them. But fantasy purposes, it doesn't really help anyone out.
It does. The thing that does confuse me a little bit is they traded away, what was that, Isaiah Crowell? Not Isaiah Crowell. Who was the running back?
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. I can't remember his name.
Carlos Hyde?
Carlos Hyde, thank you, yeah.
They traded away Carlos Hyde to San Francisco because they wanted to get Nick Chubb more playing time, and he wasn't getting enough snaps.
Right.
So you do that. It works out. He has a great end of the season, and then you sign a running back that's probably, when he's going to be out there, at least splitting carries with Nick Chubb, I think, or at least splitting snaps. So that does puzzle me a little bit of why they would do that. Because Kareem Hunt is very talented, and I do get what their line of thinking is. But, man, I don't know. You just traded away a guy so you could give Nick Chubb playing time, and now you're doing this.
I mean, it really, to me, the question is who's making, and we have to move on, but who's making the decisions? Is it John Dorsey, the GM, deciding who the personnel is, or is it Freddie Kitchens deciding who the personnel is? Because it makes complete sense to me if Freddie Kitchens walked in and said, you know what, I don't like Nick Chubb. Or, I mean, that's extreme, but hey, you know, he walked in, and not that he didn't like Nick Chubb, but he's like, I want an all-around back. I want a guy who can catch the ball. I want a guy who can run the ball, and Kareem Hunt fits the bill. A guy like Nick Chubb, he's good. He's good on the ground, but he's still got some things to learn, right? So, to me, I think Kareem Hunt's going to get a lot of playing time. But it also might be a, okay, this guy's going to be suspended at the beginning of the season. We got Nick Chubb. We got this guy for the beginning of the season. And then when Kareem Hunt comes in, if he ends up being really good, we got two good backs, and we'll figure out what to do later.
Yeah. Having too much of a good problem type thing.
Or it's John Dorsey going, I really liked Kareem Hunt. I want to give the guy a second chance. If he has a really good second half of the year, he can go out and get a job. That might be the case too. So, Antonio Brown officially requested a trade. Apparently his contract said that he had to officially ask for a trade in order to trade him. I don't know if that's true or not.
That's very odd.
But that's okay. A very odd thing. But he has officially requested a trade. So now once the league year opens, they can actually trade him, which is crazy.
I think it's going to happen sooner rather than later too.
Agreement will happen.
Who do you think is the best fit for Antonio? What would in your head you want to, other than the Patriots, because we're Patriots fans, if you had one destination for Antonio Brown that you're like, ooh, that's good, which team would it be?
San Francisco 49ers.
That was what I was thinking, but since you said it, I'll go Indianapolis Colts.
Yeah, either or. He's not going to Indy. He'll probably go to San Francisco.
Yeah, I think he'll go to an NFC team.
Yeah. I really, really, really like him. Obviously somewhere with a quarterback.
Well, yeah, that's going to be...
if the Browns went out, they couldn't do it because he's in the same division as...
Aaron Rodgers and Antonio Brown.
Green Bay? Oh, yeah, definitely.
Devontae Adams, too.
That's a pipe dream, though. Yeah. I think the most likely scenario is that he ends up in San Fran, but to give, Jimmy Garoppolo some actual, talent around him. I mean, because what those backup quarterbacks had to deal with last year in San Francisco.
It was tough.
I mean, the George Kittle was good, but everyone else, it was just bad. So I think if you add Antonio Brown to that roster, it's a skill player.
It makes the other receivers better, too, if you add Antonio Brown.
Right, big time. So I think Brown going there would be awesome. I wanted to ask you, though, what does this do for Juju?
See, I feel like it opens him up a little bit, but at the same time, he's no longer going to be getting the second corner. He's no longer going to be benefiting from Antonio Brown's double teams. I think it will help him, though, because he's going to get a lot more. I mean, he was already getting targets, but he's going to be getting, if he was getting 10 targets a game last year, he's going to be getting around 15 to 16 targets a game.
Yeah.
So I still think he'll probably take a small jump, but be careful.
I don't disagree with that, but I think that the sheer volume itself is good for Juju.
Right, which
he's shown that he can do it in the NFL, and to me, I think that if you're drafting next year and you have an opportunity to take Juju in the 5th or 6th round. Do it.
Yeah, I'll do that. Yeah.
Juju's not going in the 5th or 6th round. Juju's going in the 2nd or 3rd this time around. And that's high, but I'm just speaking for the rest of society when I say that.
Yeah.
So I think he should be going right around the 4th, 5th, or 6th round. It's 3 rounds I'm throwing out there, but it's very early, people. But I think that, Juju's going to – I think he's going to have a good year next year. And if you have an opportunity to grab him, go out and do it. Like, don't waste your time. Just go out and get Juju. I think he's going to be a fantastic piece for the Steelers. But that is a valid point that, now he's facing number one, corners. He's facing some shutdown guys.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm
all
curious,
the attention is going to be on him.
I'm curious. I'll look at this. I'll actually look at this tomorrow. And I want to see how Juju does against top corners and good slot corners, because if he's not very successful against those guys, then obviously it's going to be a little bit of a question mark going into next year. And that's a variable you have to keep into account. But he was really good this year. He wasn't spectacular, but he had times.
Good, though.
He had times where he looked like Antonio Brown.
Yeah.
And if he can produce like that, I mean, the guy went from being the 3rd string wide receiver on the Steelers 2 years ago to the number 1 guy. And so hopefully this Steelers team is completely new. I was thinking about it today, completely new.
They're starting to flip over.
You have James Conner as your running back. They're going to trade Bell. They're going to trade Antonio Brown. And they're going to have Juju, James Conner, and I mean...
A newer, younger Steelers.
Yeah, newer, younger Steelers with Ben Roethlisberger as the quarterback. Go out and draft somebody, guys.
Well, didn't they draft...
They drafted somebody, but...
was it Mason Rudolph?
Mason Rudolph, my guy. I like Mason Rudolph a lot, but I don't know if that is going to work out for them. Joe Flacco was traded to the Broncos today. They gave him a mid-round pick in return.
I like what Denver had to give up for a potential franchise quarterback. That's not a crazy package.
Yeah.
And I think Joe Flacco fits very well in Denver. So I'm excited to see them go 8-8 next year.
34 years old.
I mean,
my word.
Flacco's, I think, an upgrade from Case Keenum. I think we can both agree on that.
Yeah, definitely.
But by how much?
The stats are almost linear when you're talking about Case Keenum and Joe Flacco over the last 3 years.
I think
they're equal.
Yeah,
I think he'll
have better weapons in Denver than he did in Baltimore.
Yeah,
because Emmanuel Sanders is still there.
If he's not leaving or getting traded.
Well, for now, as of today, he's still there.
With that defense, it'll make him look really good.
The defense is really good. I mean, Baltimore's was too. They're going to be kind of the same team as Baltimore really was last year. Before Lamar Jackson got there, they were, 4-5?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, so, I mean, playing in the division with the Chargers and the Chiefs,
They also didn't have, and I don't want to speak introspectively, but I will. I think that they didn't really have a pass-blocking offensive line, which is why Lamar Jackson and those boys do so well running the football.
Yeah.
But pass blocking is just
Denver's is much better though.
I don't know. I mean,
Case Keenum got killed a lot.
You're making me not want to like this, but I do like it, so I'll continue liking it. All right.
I mean, I don't mind. I actually like it too.
Joe Flacco, he's good. He's a good quarterback. I think he's overrated.
The price they give up for him too is big for me, because he is considered. I mean, I don't think he's that good, but I think he's considered a borderline franchise quarterback, right? Back end of it, but he is around top 15?
Yeah.
Top 16?
Maybe.
That's still upper half.
Maybe 15 or 16. He's the last one.
But he's there though, right? He is there.
He made it.
So you have that guy. If you put a few pieces around him, you can definitely contend. And it is an upgrade from Case Keenum.
Yeah.
Did you hear? Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Case Keenum, they're shopping him.
Oh yeah, yep.
What team is gonna take Case Keenum in that contract?
The Vikings Washington. They'll get Alex Smith and Case Keenum all in one.
Oh, that would be such a wash.
They're we're trying to sell his $7 million contract. Okay, have fun with that.
He's
Case Keenum.
We're looking for trading options for Case Keenum.
I'm trying to think who doesn't have a team that would.
The Jacksonville Jaguars.
Yeah, seriously.
He could be the next heir to Blake Bortles.
That's ridiculous.
Let's get into perfect 2018 draft.
So, let's get into our main segment, our perfect 2018 fantasy football draft. This is what you came here for, our breakdown of drafts in 2018. So basically how it breaks down is I have received the first pick. So I will pick the first round. Rick will tell you the second round, and we'll keep going back and forth and give you our perfect team. We're using Fantasy Pros ADP to determine who went in what round. And I want to preface this by saying that all fantasy platforms are different. All analysts rank differently. The whole world is completely different in each platform.
It is, yeah.
And the ADP is an average of all the platforms. So you're getting an average of every single platform that was put together. Thank you, Fantasy Pros.
We love you.
We are picking what we think are the best players from each round, and the details of this are 10-team, 15-roster spot, half PPR, snake draft. If you are in a redraft league, sorry, people, we will not be drafting kickers and defenses. I know how sad you are to hear that. And we will not only talk about the guy we drafted, but the outlook of each round and look at who people drafted last year that were complete flops or complete successes, some great guys. So let's start with the first round. The options here: Todd Gurley, Le'Veon Bell, David Johnson, Ezekiel Elliott, Antonio Brown, Saquon Barkley, Alvin Kamara, Leonard Fournette, Kareem Hunt, DeAndre Hopkins, and Melvin Gordon. There was some really... it's the first round. I mean, these are the boys.
So
these are the studs. These are the guys that you want.
I feel like in past drafts, it's usually more hit than miss in the first round. But I don't feel like it's like this, where like 90% of it was a hit.
Yeah.
I mean, Kareem Hunt obviously had the issue in the end of the season.
And you had Leonard Fournette below. David Johnson busted.
But even David Johnson, if you took David Johnson second overall, you were.
He's an RB2 at best.
I know you you could have used Todd Gurley or Zeke or Barkley, but you still had an borderline RB1 there,
right?
And that's considered one of the biggest busts of the first round. Like,
it's true.
It was a very, very good first round.
Very good first round. We took Todd Gurley. His ADP was 1. First overall pick.
Yep.
Couldn't go wrong with Todd Gurley. If you were sitting there at number 1 or somehow didn't have the first overall pick but drafted him 2 because some team drafted Antonio Brown or Le'Veon Bell 1. Good luck. Those are the people who drafted in like July. They're so excited. They're like, let's go. They drafted before the preseason even started. Last time I make that mistake. He had the most half PPR and standard points in those leagues. And he did this in only 14 games. He missed 2 games due to injury. I think it was a knee injury. Gurley was a touchdown machine, 21 all-purpose touchdowns.
Wow.
He's the cog that makes the Los Angeles Rams offense run. You saw it in the Super Bowl. The running game was stopped, and the Rams couldn't move the ball. They completely rely on the running game entirely, but Todd Gurley, when he's on, they rely on him. With a bust being less than 12 points. Todd Gurley busted only 14% of his games. The first round was an interesting round with busts like Le'Veon Bell, David Johnson, Leonard Fournette. But you had an 80 or 90% success rate in the first round. You can't really go wrong with anyone in the first round, but I would say don't draft wide receivers in the first round. I think it's a waste of time, and I think that you can get a similar caliber guy in the first round in the second round without the first round price tag. It is not easy to get the big time backs in that first round. It's just not.
That's a good point. It's a really good point.
And if you go out in the back of the first round and you have guys like Kareem Hunt and Melvin Gordon and Saquon Barkley sitting on the board, and you're taking Antonio Brown and DeAndre Hopkins, you're not winning fantasy leagues. You're just picking good receivers. When you go into the second round and you have Julio Jones and Devontae Adams and Tyreek Hill and Michael Thomas and Odell Beckham, and like that's second and third round wide receivers, and you're drafting a wide receiver in the first round. What are you doing?
Right.
So that to me, draft a running back in the first round. You can't go wrong with that. I think it's maybe the best decision that'll help your team. If you're in a half PPR league, the positions are kind of equal, so it doesn't really matter. You're kind of getting a stud regardless. In a PPR league, it definitely doesn't matter. You're probably drafting wide receivers quite a bit.
Oh yeah.
But in a half PPR setting, I would go with running backs. They're so scarce that it's like you're not going to get a good guy.
Yeah, to go up that point, you were saying it's easier to get a guy in the second or third round for receivers.
Yep.
Other than Christian McCaffrey, there wasn't an RB1 in the second or third round.
No.
Or even the fourth. However, in the second and third and fourth rounds, there was a lot of WR1s.
Yeah.
So do yourself a favor, take that running back in the first round.
Mm-hmm. Big time. Let's go to round 2. What do you got, boss?
So round 2, we had Odell Beckham, Dalvin Cook, Julio Jones, Christian McCaffrey, Michael Thomas, Devontae Freeman, Davante Adams, thank you, and Keenan Allen.
Ugh.
So the theme in this round was receivers, I think. Yeah. The big bust, the one that comes up to me, is Devontae Freeman, and it's not really entirely his fault, but the injury hurt him. But even when I think he played like the first 2 games, and he was not good in those games either.
Yeah.
And it kind of goes off your point about taking the running back in the first round.
Mm-hmm.
If you were looking for an RB1 in round 2, good luck.
I'm going to draft Devontae.
You better have taken McCaffrey.
Next year, people are going to draft Devontae Adams and DeAndre Hopkins in the first round.
Yep, 100%. I think that's going to be a mistake.
And when you can get AB in probably the third round or second
Well,
or
it
third
depends
round.
where he goes. We'll figure that out. My perfect pick is my boy, my fantasy lover, Christian McCaffrey. Ever since this guy has entered the league, I love him. Some people gave up on him a little bit last year. He started off kind of slow. He had his first touchdown actually came in week 5. So the first 4 weeks of the season, he didn't have a touchdown.
Wow.
Some people were giving up on him. That's when I bought him. That really helped for me personally. But guess where he finished among half PPR running backs? Number 2, right behind Todd Gurley.
Wow.
The dude was a beast. But what helps him a lot, especially in half PPR or PPR leagues, is his catches. The dude gets insane catches. He had, I believe it was 106 receptions for a running back. That is unheard of.
That's crazy.
Absolutely unheard of. The guy's a stud. He leads Carolina's offense. Mm-hmm. McCaffrey was the guy to go here. And a rare RB1 not taken in the first round.
So I'll admit I was very wrong about Christian McCaffrey this year and in the past. I still have a hard time putting him in tier 1, which people don't seem to have a problem with right now. Those stats don't lie, so I'm going to put him in tier 1 probably, but we'll see what happens. Through the first 5 weeks of the year, he was a low-end RB2 to me. And the reason why I say that is because his lack of touchdown production, which I thought he was never going to get. So he just like his whole career, the first year and a half of his career, he did not score touchdowns. It was not a part of his repertoire. But for some reason, it came out. They realized, okay, we're going to use him in the red zone.
Maybe we should. Wait, we have Christian McCaffrey on our team.
Let's use him.
Let's use him in the red zone.
Wait, we were throwing to DJ Moore? Maybe we should throw to Christian McCaffrey.
Fades to Devin Funches don't work.
He started scoring touchdowns, and it made him a high-end RB1, maybe the best running back in fantasy towards the back end of the season. He won your league, no doubt about it. If you had him on your fantasy team and you won your championship, it was because of Christian McCaffrey. His ADP was, I believe, 15, so you got him in the middle of the second round. He busted 31% of the time, but those statistics are skewed because he didn't start well at the beginning of the season. And after week 7, that went down to 20% of the time in the last 10 games. Mm-hmm. So there were lots of busts in the second round.
Can we make a note?
Yeah, go ahead.
Dalvin Cook.
Oh, my gosh.
So I want you to
bust.
Tell me what you told me before the show started about Dalvin Cook.
Dalvin Cook was a second-round draft pick. Now, last year, I looked at Dalvin Cook in my drafts, and I was like, you know what? I want this guy. He looks good. He's a good player. And I went off the hype. I didn't look at the numbers from 2017. I went off the hype. Didn't watch the film. Last year, he had 54 standard league fantasy points.
This is 2017.
This is 2017.
Yep.
The year before this year. 54 standard league fantasy points over the course of 4 games. He played roughly 4 full games. I think it was 3.5 games, really. In those games, he did not score over 15 fantasy points in a standard league. He tore his ACL in week 4, and he gets drafted in the second round.
His ADP was 14.
What are you people doing?
I almost fell into this, too. I almost drafted him on draft day. And then when I did a little more research, I was like, ooh,
yeah,
that's not a good idea.
If you drafted Dalvin Cook, you not only busted that, but if you picked him in the second round.
And I don't blame anyone for taking Dalvin Cook.
I don't blame him at all. He's a good player. But to me, Dalvin Cook should have been where guys like, I don't know, where did you take Jerick McKinnon when you drafted?
I think it was third round.
Third round? I think he should have been taken
late third round, fourth round.
Late third round, fourth round at best. He's being taken in the second round. A guy who got 54 fantasy points over the course of 4 games and scored 1 touchdown. And it showed at the beginning of this season. He did not look great at all. He was a complete bust. I look at Beckham and Allen as second-round busts. What you expect from the second-round guy, you completely did not get from Beckham and Allen. Allen was a disappointment in the first half of the year, Keenan Allen. Yeah. And Odell Beckham was good, but not a second-round pick. I think it was a third-round pick at best. He got hurt, and he has no QB, so I don't really blame Beckham. But Keenan Allen drafted way too early. If you wanted a wide receiver too, Keenan Allen was perfect. I had him on my team half the year, perfect. But the problem with Allen is that you were basically paying for him at a wide receiver 1 price.
Yeah,
and he's not a wide receiver 1, just not at all. So
it doesn't help that the weapons kind of emerged on that Chargers team.
It's true. Mike Williams,
correct?
Both the Williams brothers. They're not brothers, so
we'll just call them that.
Yeah, we'll just call them that.
Be their nickname.
Yeah, new nickname. So I just think when you look at the whole first round, Freeman obviously got hurt. When you look at the whole second round, it's a perfect round to start drafting wide receivers. You got your big time running back in the first round. You gotta, you can look at drafting wide receivers. We drafted a running back here because we know what happens the rest of the draft. So,
right.
Obviously that changes things. But if you draft a wide receiver here, I won't blame you. I drafted AJ Green in this round.
I drafted Julio Jones.
So it's a good place to get a wide receiver if you want one. And not to go with the run, but go with the run. Get a wide receiver. Let's move on to round number 3. Guys of the likes of Jordan Howard, Rob Gronkowski, A.J. Green, Joe Mixon, Aaron Rodgers, Mike Evans, LeSean McCoy, Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce, and Stefon Diggs. This was a split for me between Joe Mixon, Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce. And Kelce, too early to draft a tight end. Way too early. Don't be drafting.
If you are going to draft a tight end, though,
it's a good tight end to draft.
It's a good tight end to draft.
He is. Right. He puts up wide receiver 2 numbers. So I would at your tight end spot definitely, but it's a waste of a draft pick at this point because you're wasting your time not getting a talented wide receiver
when you can get another top 5 tight end much later in the draft.
Joe Mixon was spectacular when he played, but he did fall off towards the end of the year. And I take this guy because he scored the highest in standard fantasy points. He's also a kick returner, so that fudged our league's numbers up a little bit.
It did, yeah.
But Tyreek Hill is the guy that we're going to take. ADP was 27. Tyreek Hill is a guy who I wasn't sure about in last year's drafts. And when I say I wasn't sure, I said avoid him.
Me too. And I was like, guess what?
Get out of my way.
I was big on the Patrick Mahomes train before the season started, and I still said avoid Tyreek Hill.
He had a really good 2017 campaign, one of the best receivers in fantasy, and I did not think he was going to repeat it. I don't really like his style of play, considering it's mostly boom or bust. He busted half of his games. Yeah, when you call a bust scoring under 10 points in a game for a wide receiver, he did that 8 out of his 16 games.
That's actually a crazy number.
That's not good at all. Like that to me, that's not a very good statistic. But he finished first in scoring in standard leagues. He's a steal at wide receiver in the 3rd round, considering his breakout potential. And if you have this guy on your team and you need a strong wide receiver 2 to make up for, and you have a strong wide receiver 2 to make up for it, draft this guy.
Yeah.
Because if you have a guy that's getting you consistently 10 points a week, like a Brandon Cooks or a Julian Edelman. Now, some people disagree with the Julian take, but I will talk about that later.
This year.
Yeah. But if you have a guy like Brandon Cooks getting you like 10 points a game and you have, Tyreek Hill, he can bust every once in a while and you're okay with that. If you have this guy on your team, you got a great player, but you got a guy that lacks consistency.
It's true.
From what I saw, I'll go over that later. I was going to give you a Patrick Mahomes stat.
Oh, gosh.
So my way too early picks for this round, Aaron Rodgers, Stephon Diggs. Don't be drafting those clowns this early.
And I love Aaron Rodgers, too.
And I love Stephon Diggs.
We both do.
We both love Diggs and Rodgers. But it was, I think, Rodgers, wait till the 6th round. Not even this year.
It's that quarterback strat.
I don't even know where he's going.
Don't take him that early.
Unless
he's about Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah, it's true. Some busts, LaShawn McCoy, Rob Gronkowski, Jordan Howard, all busts. I fell on the Jordan Howard train, fell on the...
You weren't the only one. I was on that train, too.
So, I had like a... what do they call it? When you were in the 1800s and you were a sailor. You had a fleet. Oh, that's the word. I had a fleet of ships, and it was Rob Gronkowski and Jordan Howard was the name of 2 of those ships, and I went sinking.
Captain went down.
I went down with those ships. Both ADP'd at 21. Way too early to draft Gronk, by the way. But Jordan Howard, I didn't really anticipate the situation of
human joystick.
Yeah, the human joystick, Tariq Cohen, who wasn't really amazing, but Matt Nagy was like, "Oh my God, Tariq Cohen's good at football. Wow, we're gonna start running it with him," and I kind of just left Jordan Howard in the dust. With that being said, he wasn't awful.
No, he wasn't.
Howard. I just got rid of him as soon as I got the chance because I drafted him as my RB2, and it didn't turn out that way.
Yeah, not the best RB2. I mean, if you look at this round overall, there weren't really any like true busts other than LaShawn McCoy, I think.
Yeah.
LaShawn McCoy was just absolutely awful.
Yeah.
Not really his fault. The Bills' offense wasn't that good for most of the season, and they didn't use him too much. But
yeah,
man, I feel sorry if you took LaShawn McCoy.
Yeah, dude.
But everyone else, I think, even if like Jordan Howard, like you just said, wasn't great and didn't meet expectations, but he still was like a solid flex for a lot of the season.
Yeah.
And Gronk had his moments, kind of a little bit. Trade bait, hopefully.
The 3rd round was filled with some good players, but you have to be careful who you draft early. Don't be drafting quarterbacks and tight ends in the 3rd round. I'm going to keep saying that every round until we get to the round where you're supposed to take them. In this round, you should be building the structure of your fantasy team. Any good house has a foundation, has a nice little concrete foundation. You're building the house. You're an architect. You're building something. You got to build a nice foundation in order for it to stand up straight. Yeah. Your foundation is running backs and wide receivers, not quarterbacks and tight ends. You 100%. Win fantasy championships by 100%. Drafting running backs and wide receivers. Don't be drafting quarterbacks and tight ends in the first
3 rounds.
Yeah, first 3 rounds. Let's move on to the 4th round. What do you got, dude?
The 4th round is a little bit of a wild card round. At this point, you've probably taken 2 running backs and a receiver.
Yep.
Or 2 wide receivers and a running back in some cases. So in the 4th round, our options are T.Y. Hilton, Alex Collins, Adam Thielen, Kenyon Drake, Amari Cooper, Derrick Henry, Deshaun Watson, Jay Ajayi, Doug Baldwin, and Zach
Ertz.
Yeah, Zach Ertz.
He's going to be huge.
This round kind of sucked.
Catching passes
For being honest.
Oh, yeah, it blows.
This is the 4th round of a fantasy draft.
Who am I to say, why did you draft Doug Baldwin in the 4th round? But I'll say it.
I mean, we've been there. Trust me. You know who I took in the 4th round? I believe it was Allen Robinson. So yeah, there's that one. This draft did have busts though. Kenyon Drake was up and down, but mostly down. Alex Collins mostly down. Jay Ajayi was hurt, but T.Y. Hilton was down. Derrick Henry stunk the entire year except for the last 3 or 4 weeks. Doug Baldwin blew. The guys that were good were, I think Deshaun Watson had up and down, but for the most part, he was up.
Yeah.
Zach Ertz was actually a very, very solid option. Prefer not to take a tight end here, but it wouldn't kill it. Like, Zach Ertz isn't a bad
choice.
Especially this past year. But I think the guy in our perfect draft is Adam Thielen.
Yes, Thielen.
At this point, you would have, going by us, you'd have 2 running backs, 2 receivers.
Mm-hmm.
Adam Thielen, I think, was a little bit not as good as people thought he was, considering how he finished the season. He finished the season very, very poorly. Didn't get a touchdown in his last 3 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
He was kind of inconsistent. He had 19 receiving yards in Week 15.
Mm-hmm.
He was a completely different player in the second half.
Yeah.
However, he was still overall pretty solid. I mean, he was still a top 5 fantasy receiver, half PPR. And he's like, if you're putting him in our situation with Tyreek Hill, that's still a solid duo.
Yeah.
And I think by far the best player. Well, I wouldn't say by far because of Zach Ertz, but I'd say best situation would be Adam Thielen here in the 4th round.
So Thielen to me is the best guy from the 4th round easily.
Easily.
Yeah, he started off the season with wide receiver 1 numbers. He did maybe one of the best. He
was the best wide receiver.
If Hill didn't blow up like he did in the first half of the year, and like I think he had 2 30-point games, Adam Thielen would have overtaken him. I think it was 11 or so straight 100-yard games. And he just started off so well.
He did.
In the second half of the season, he began struggling, and he put up wide receiver 3 numbers. Not even just wide receiver 2 numbers. He was down.
He's a scary guy for 2019.
He was, after 20 is where he was ranking in every week.
No.
His bust percentage was 43%, and the second half, I think, was due to the fact that he fell off in the touchdown column.
He did fall off. But do you put that all on Thielen, or do you put some of that on Kirk Cousins? Because that Vikings offense in general,
it's not good.
Struggled a lot in the second half. Well, they did blow up against Miami, but other than that game, they pretty much were the same team. I don't know.
There was also a shift, and I did note this in the regular season. There was this massive shift from throwing the ball to Thielen to throwing the ball to Diggs.
Yep, 100%.
And Diggs had, at the beginning of the season, he was averaging like 5 or 6 targets a game, and at the end of the season, he was averaging like 10 to 12. I don't know if Thielen is a guy that they want to continue feeding. I don't know if they really look at him as that kind of receiver. I think they want Diggs to be that guy. And so if you're an Adam Thielen owner in a dynasty league, you're kind of screwed, because if Thielen doesn't get the targets, I think he's going to be what he was in the second half of the year, to be honest with you. And if that's the case, you're
porked if that's the case.
Go trade Adam Thielen
for a first-round pick.
Yeah, for a first-round pick. Go do that now. Or I don't even know. I wouldn't give him up again. I wouldn't trade for him for a first-round pick, but that's just me. You have any more notes on the 4th round? Or
4th round blue?
Yeah.
Let's be honest.
Yeah.
Zach Ertz, it's interesting that you say you would easily take Adam Thielen, because I think Zach Ertz had an awesome season.
Yeah, he did.
And I would, even though I strongly consider going against tight ends this early, I'd very strongly consider taking Zach Ertz in that spot. And Deshaun Watson was good, but man, the 4th round stunk.
It was bad.
For it to be that high in the draft,
and
there'd be I think 7 out of 10 I'd consider busts.
Yeah, big time.
Now, Amari Cooper was good, but let's be honest, most people gave up on Amari Cooper before he got traded to Dallas.
I got him off the waiver wire.
Right, in our league, and that includes me. He was on the waiver wire in our league.
Mm-hmm.
And what week did he get traded? Week 6, week 7. He was on the waiver wire at that point.
Yeah.
So a lot of teams gave up on him at that point. So I'd consider him a bust for the most part. Mm-hmm. And then Derrick Henry, he went off, but how many people were starting him in week 14 and those weeks that he went off?
Yeah, he was not. To me, he wasn't a startable option until after the second week in a row. He became a legit RB1, RB2 when everybody gave up on him. And the fact that some of these guys, T.Y. Hilton, ADP 31, why?
Yeah.
Kenyon Drake, ADP 35. Now, that's not – Kenyon Drake is a talented running back. It's not his fault that he's not getting the ball.
Yeah, they gave Frank Gore more carries.
You can try to predict that, but I don't think that's possible. But Kenyon Drake's not a guy you should be drafting in the 4th round. Amari Cooper, I would see him as a 4th round draft pick. Yeah, I think he's a wide receiver too, coming into last year. So I don't disagree with that, but I think he busted. Derrick Henry, I don't understand that pick, especially when they added Dion Lewis. And if you're thinking at the time, why are you drafting Derrick Henry when Dion Lewis signed? Deshaun Watson, he was a good pick, but it's way too early to be A, drafting a quarterback, and B, drafting
You can get
Deshaun
the same
Watson.
value for Deshaun Watson in the 8th or 9th round.
Deshaun Watson finished 3rd in fantasy points. A guy who finished very close to what he did was Andrew Luck, and he was drafted in the 9th round.
Yep.
So don't waste your picks on those quarterbacks early when you can get them in the back end of the round, at back end of the draft. J.J. got hurt, but he was looking inconsistent at the beginning of the year. Doug Baldwin, why? And Zach Ertz, like you said, he's the closest thing to what you would look at as a success in this round, but at the same time, I'm not drafting that. I'm not drafting Zach Ertz in this round because I just don't see the points per game value from Zach Ertz compared to Adam Thielen. That's not even close to me.
Yeah. I want to defend T.Y. Hilton just really quickly.
Go ahead.
I drafted T.Y. Hilton, so I have to do this. It was kind of dumb to draft T.Y. Hilton, but my line of thinking, I think a lot of people, was Andrew Luck's back. Going into the year, there was a lot of hype. Andrew Luck could be back, and if he is back, T.Y. Hilton's going to be a WR1.
Right.
So I could see the line of thinking, but yeah, 31 is pretty early.
Big time. Let's move on to the 5th round. This round was filled with many busts. We had Royce Freeman.
Your boy.
I can't even get past that Rolls Royce. Juju Smith-Schuster, Larry Fitzgerald, Jarvis Landry, Tom Brady, Lamar Miller, Brandon Cooks, Demaryius Thomas, Russell Wilson, Jimmy Graham, Josh Gordon. I was between Juju, Lamar Miller, and Brandon Cooks, and I chose Juju. Juju is a bright, up-and-coming player with a lot of potential. We talked about him a little bit earlier, so we won't go into too much detail on him, but he was a 5th round. The 5th round was filled with busts, and it came down to Lamar Miller, who was ADP 44, Brandon Cooks, ADP 46, and Juju, ADP 42, who gave you good games in this spot if you were looking for some decent play. So Juju is a guy that gave you a lot of big games and stuck with you at wide receiver 2 numbers for most of the season. His bust percentage, like Hill, was 50%. And when you have a bust percentage like Hill at 50% and the same breakout value, you're getting him in the 5th round. Would you rather, that or drafting Tyreek Hill super early? We drafted Tyreek Hill because he's the best player in the 2nd round. But Juju Smith-Schuster, great guy to add in the 5th round. And you could use him even to say, okay, he's having a successful couple weeks. Let's deal him and move him to a new team. So he gave you an average of 12 points per game, finished 8th among wide receivers in half PPR, and he was just a very successful player. With the exception of Lamar Miller, Brandon Cooks, and Juju, the 5th round was filled with busts. It's still too early to be drafting quarterbacks and tight ends.
You know what's interesting? The 4th and 5th rounds, still considered very high.
Yeah.
We have a lot of busts. Mm-hmm. It drops after the 3rd round.
Trend.
Very interesting to keep in mind for your next upcoming draft this season. Your boy Royce Freeman kind of blew.
Rolls Royce.
You were high
Phillip
on him
Lindsay ripped my heart and soul away.
This round I took Jimmy Graham. Another dumb pick from me.
Yeah.
You're probably thinking, how did I win the championship? I'll tell you later.
You made a lot of trades.
Jimmy Graham. I drafted well at the end, but
continue.
Jimmy Graham. The line of thinking for me again was he's going to be paired with Aaron Rodgers. He could be a really potential top 3 tight end with that, and I'm getting him a little later in the draft. And, Kelsey, Gronk, or Ertz. Obviously didn't work out at all.
Yeah.
A lot of these guys. Russell Wilson, I think he had a pretty good year, but he's so inconsistent though. And he turned it on in the second half, but you're not looking at Russell Wilson the 5th round. I think that's just too early for him. And then my boy Tom Brady, our boy Tom Brady.
What are you doing? Why are people still drafting Tom Brady in fantasy drafts?
Well, he did have a good year, 2017, but
not a good fantasy option.
Yeah, no.
Great quarterback to have in real life, not in fantasy.
Playoffs,
not in fantasy. He was just not very good.
Juju was a good pick though. I like Juju for this past year because my favorite thing about Juju is sort of similar to Thielen, very consistent. which is something I look for in receivers. He'd get you 10 points a week. He'd get you 100 yards, or he'd get you like 50 yards and a touchdown. He was always getting around 10 to 12 to 15 fantasy points.
It's true. Let's move on to the 6th round.
6th round, we got options. Mark Ingram, Allen Robinson. I took him in the 4th round, by the way. Marvin Jones, Golden Tate, Chris Hogan, Cam Newton, Marshawn Lynch. I'm just here so I won't get fined. Carlos Hyde, Greg Olsen, and Drew Brees. Another sucky round, the 6th round. I don't want to defend my Allen Robinson pick. Honestly, I don't even know what was going through my head. And again, you're still thinking, how did this guy win his championship?
Yeah.
We'll get to it. Believe me.
Later.
I know it looks bad, but we'll get to it. This one I was kind of debating, but it was pretty obvious once I looked into it a little more. Mark Ingram. This round wasn't filled with really any key guys. Cam Newton blew for a lot of the year.
Yeah.
Drew Brees for the first half of the year
was good.
Looked like he was the number 2 quarterback and was a legit option.
Yeah.
Kind of fell off. Greg Olsen's not an awful pick. It's still I think a little early to take a tight end, but injured. And injured's the big one. But when he did play, he was solid.
Yeah.
But I think Mark Ingram was the guy. He didn't play for, I believe it was the first 4 weeks of the season.
4 games of the season, yep.
Yep, so that did hurt his total points.
Don't even remember why he was suspended.
However, when he did come back, he was pretty solid. He's a good flex. I mean, he had a few games there where he really popped. The game against Chicago, the game against Philly. So he had 2 weeks where he was looked like a legit RB1 that went back to back.
Right.
After that, he kind of fell off a little bit. But when you needed him in the playoffs, he was a guy that would get you 10 to 12 fantasy points. A good flex.
Definitely.
In round 6, you're not really looking for an RB1 or a WR1.
Yeah.
If you can get a guy like Mark Ingram
if
in
you're
round
looking
6,
for an RB1 or a WR1 in the 6th round,
you got more problems. Yeah.
You got some other things to worry about.
I still am very sad I took Allen Robinson here.
This round is it basically has no players.
Yeah.
Kind of blows.
Carlos Hyde, bro.
Carlos Hyde. Mark Ingram gave you a lot of really good games and a couple of busts. And then it was just frustrating to watch him. I had him on my fantasy team. Unfortunately, he was thrusted into my running back. I was going to say running back 3. My running back 2 position.
Yeah, he was. He was your RB2.
He was my RB2 because I had Kareem Hunt, and I couldn't find a trade partner for my life to try to get rid of Mark Ingram.
he's gonna come back.
To be honest, it was 2 weeks before Le'Veon Bell left, and that's who I traded to get Mark Ingram, so I'm okay with that. He was a bust in 54% of his games, and having him on your bench was a great option, but
he was a very good bench.
That was about it. I think he started on most teams as a flex and would have started on most teams as a flex, but the consistency was not there. It was just it's difficult to have a guy that doesn't get a plurality of the snaps. And if you don't have the big man, Alvin Kamara, and you're trying to sit here with Mark Ingram and figure things out, then it's frustrating the crap out of you because I'm watching this game, I'm watching all the games, and I'm like, okay, everything relies on this one player for an entire freaking game, and he's not getting 55% of the snaps or even 60% of the snaps. So it's just difficult to watch. Every player in this round was either a bust or you drafted too early and got hurt. Finding a gem in this round, these particular rounds are so important to your fantasy team.
It is, yeah.
Because if you can find a gem, like even Marshawn Lynch. Marshawn Lynch was a good player when he was on the field before he got hurt. And he was a talented guy. And I think, if you drafted Drew Brees here early in the season, you got some successes. So finding the gems in these rounds is the option. Unfortunately, in this round, you had about a 9 or 10% success rate, and you're in the 6th round and you're trying to find a guy. Now, is the 6th round determining how your team's going to turn out? No. But you should have your core after the 5th round. That should be it, that you should have your core guys. And the 6th round should be options for your bench and so on and so forth. We got to move on to the 7th round. This will be the last round of the show, and we will go through every single option here. There will be a part 2. We will go through rounds 8 through 15 next week.
True. Those are the rounds that can win your league.
As
you will find out next week.
As you will find out next week. So in the 7th round, you had Dion Lewis, Kerryon Johnson, Tevin Coleman, Marquise Goodwin, Corey Davis, Evan Ingram, Jamal Williams, and Michael Crabtree.
Garbage.
Bad round. Tevin Coleman was my selection, ADP 66. Now, I was fighting between him and Kerryon. And then I looked at Kerryon's numbers, and I was like, welp.
I'm a fan of Kerryon next year.
I'm a big fan of Kerryon Johnson next year.
Yeah.
It took Matt Patricia the whole year to get to the point where he was like, okay, I'm going to draft Kerryon Johnson. I mean, I'm going to use Kerryon Johnson.
He could probably be a good running back.
It took him the whole stinking year to figure that out. And I had to take Tevin Coleman here because Tevin Coleman was just consistent. Mm-hmm. He was extremely consistent. As much as people want to trash on, he was like the most unliked player,
especially
in this entire league.
I trashed on him a lot, mostly because you'd have to kind of be there. But Morgan over here had him on his team, and he was like, "Dude, Tevin Coleman, bro, listen, high. I know, like
you gotta do
I know
it.
you have like
Christian
McCaffrey, but like Tevin Coleman's the real deal, bro. I swear, dude, he's gonna get you 20 points a week easy." Dude, Devontae Freeman's injured, bro. Tevin Coleman, it's time for Tevin Coleman, bro.
You done?
Yes. I had to get that off my chest.
Coleman was a weird player, consistent with what he provided, got 10 points a game, never really had a huge game. I think it was one 22-point game after I traded him. He scored 110 points in half his games. Great 7th round value. It's a great 7th round value.
Yeah.
For a guy who can give you a game or two against a good matchup if needed. Most of the guys in this round ended up on the waiver wire. Some talented guys, but not trustworthy.
Guys to watch out for next year, though. Not great this year, though. Kerryon Johnson is one. We just talked about him. Another guy, Corey Davis. If he had consistent quarterback play, I think he would have had a really good year.
Yeah.
He's a very talented wide receiver that just
fell off.
He did fall off, but it's not really his fault. Marcus Mariota was his quarterback for half the season who doesn't throw the ball a lot, and then his other quarterback that does throw the ball is Blaine Gabbert.
Yeah.
So the stats aren't going to be there for him, but
it's so tough.
He's a guy that to watch out for a breakout season next year.
Definitely.
He's also a young receiver. It typically takes, other than like Odell, it typically takes receivers a few years to really get going.
Yeah.
Corey Davis, former 5th overall pick, a lot of talent.
Yeah.
Watch out for him next year.
So that'll do it for the first half of our perfect fantasy draft for the 2019 season. We will go over rounds 8 through 15 next week. We believe that dissecting not only the second half of the draft is
important.
Huge important area. Those are the rounds that win your league. You think that drafting good in the first 5 rounds, 6 rounds, 7 rounds wins your league?
I didn't win the league from the first 8 rounds, as you can tell.
Yeah, as you can tell. Every single guy was so
I took Corey Davis, we just mentioned, was garbage. I took Allen Robinson, we just mentioned, garbage. Jimmy Graham, I took in the 5th round.
The only guy you really hit on.
I took T.Y. Hilton. Garbage.
The only guy you really hit on was Saquon Barkley.
My first 2 I took Julio Jones too.
Yeah, and Julio.
So my first 2 rounds were good.
I mean, that's where you got to do it. First 2 rounds, get your core and move forward.
Mm-hmm.
And dissecting these drafts is what is going to help you win your league next year.
100%.
When you start planning your draft, you need to, it doesn't start with scouting guys. It doesn't start with watching film of them or looking at their statistics or figuring out where they should go in the draft or creating a draft strategy. You need to look at the previous draft and the previous years and figure out what went right, what went wrong. And we are going to be doing that for you guys over the next couple months and just dissecting that whole atrocity that was the 2018 season. Everything that went right, everything that went wrong, and what you can use moving forward. It does help to know that Adam Thielen was terrible in the second half of the year. And that is going to hurt him going into the 2019 campaign. Now, does that mean that he's going to take is he going to get drafted later? I don't know. But these are the things that you need to look at going forward.
Yep, you got to keep these things in mind.
You got to keep them in mind. So thank you for listening to this iteration of the Fantasy Champions podcast. like I said earlier, follow us, like us, do all that stuff. Subscribe and leave a review. We want your feedback. We want your concepts, your ideas, and your thoughts. So leave a review. And we got a lot in store. See you next week, Fantasy Champions.
See ya.
Thank you for listening to the Fantasy Champions podcast. Make sure you subscribe on iTunes and YouTube, and follow us on Twitter @TheFFChamps.